Linda, it's so great to see you. And here we are in March, and it's a snowy Wisconsin, but it's still a great day no matter what. So, welcome to the
It is.
podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here to talk about the important work that you're doing with Just Dane. Not just right now, but you've been doing this work for years and years and years. So, before we get started, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Oh yeah, thanks. Thanks, man. I appreciate the invitation. So yeah, my name's Linda Ketcham. Um, I have been here at Just Dane for 20 years. I've been working in the nonprofit world really since I graduated from college. So, and a little before that actually. So, going on 46 years. So, aging myself, but um, yeah, and I'm a mom of a daughter who's attending UW Milwaukee, so um, doing well there. Just celebrated their 21st birthday, so that's kind of a big milestone. My spouse and I live live here in Madison. We've been here since 1998. Moved here from Illinois, so she could go to graduate school through the MSW program at UW, and yeah. So, but originally from Illinois. Go Cubs, go Bears. That's how we learn about faith in Illinois, Matt. That's being Cubs and Bears fans.
I
So,
appreciate that. I appreciate that. Well, wonderful.
oh
I
yeah,
also have a child that's my youngest goes to UW Milwaukee as well, and must be in the
oh,
same age
okay.
group because Augie is 20, so studying in England this semester, but through
Oh,
UW
very cool.
Milwaukee. Great school. You know, I'd never been. This
Yeah.
is a little plug for UW Milwaukee here on the podcast, but I'd never been to the campus until we toured it, and just really, really wonderful. Just love everything about
Hmm.
it. So, go. What's is it? Panthers? Is that what it is? Go
Panthers. Yep.
Go
Yep.
Panthers. All right. Well, I think pretty much everybody, especially everybody connected to justice work in Dane County or the Madison area, knows about Just Dane. But for those who, may not be familiar with the area or Just Dane in general, why don't you share a little bit about the work that you do?
Sure. Yeah. So Just Dane, we were originally known as Madison Area Urban Ministry, officially founded as a 501(c)(3) in 1974, but we actually started a few years before that. So been around over 50 years. We changed our name in 2020. Um, Not an ideal year to do that. There was other stuff happening, so it's taken a while for people to catch up and realize we're the same organization. But um, we have historically served as an incubator and fiscal sponsor for new ideas and initiatives in Dane County, or sometimes statewide, um, including Wisconsin Faith Voices. So that's kind of a nice connection with you. Um, Typically with the goal of just providing that support until they're able to spin off as a 501(c)(3. But there's some groups that we just continue to work with and provide that service. We've always worked on advocacy in specific areas related to racial and economic justice, fair and affordable housing, access to education. And for us in the 1990s, where we saw all of that converge was with who we send to prison and what happens when people come out of prison. So we started to develop a number of initiatives focused on prison reform and reentry work. So the first thing we did was create a reentry simulation, and we did that, launched the first one in 1999. We still do those around the state. There are some groups that do those, but they are not affiliated with ours, although they've borrowed materials and such. But we still do those around the state. It's an opportunity for somebody to just learn what it's like that first month out of prison. And then we started to create some direct service programs and circles of support, working with folks returning home. A circle of volunteers meets with them weekly and supports them. Journey Home, which focuses on connecting people with resources in the community. Reentry peer support and case management services. Our vocational training program, Just Bakery, which is a social enterprise, but also works with students who earn college credit while they're in the class as they get credentials, industry recognized national credentials. We have our mentoring program for kids who are impacted by parental incarceration. and continue our advocacy work. And our peer support programs, a great collaboration with Centro Hispano here in town to make sure that the Latino community has access to reentry supports. That was a huge gap,
Mm.
both in the peer support field, but just reentry in general. So we're in our 5th year of that collaboration. I will just tell you, it's been one of the highlights of my professional life to get to work with everyone over at Centro and learn from them and share resources and just dream about how we can address the needs. So, um, and our board, back in 2007, our board had a staff and we had a staff and board retreat, and we made a conscious decision not to spin off any our programs that we were doing in terms of reentry. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One, no one else was doing that work really in the community at that time. But two, we realized that we're much more effective advocates when we are in proximity with people who are dealing with those struggles. And so I always kind of like I kind of liken our work to Reverend William Sloane Coffin, who said, "Charity, yes, always, but never as a substitute for justice." And so, as important as what we do for folks who are returning home in terms of direct service, I still feel like our end goal is that advocacy piece where we don't have to do that anymore because we've created a system that is more just, more equitable, that is not on this craze of mass incarceration, that is adequately supporting the safety net when people come home. And then we can focus on something else happily. So,
Yes, I would. That would be great. Now, unfortunately, I don't know how close we are to that goal of yours. You and
yeah,
I both
I know.
may be out of our professional lives by that point. Yeah, it's interesting because, and I've shared this with you that I was a prison chaplain for close to a
Mm-hmm.
decade, and it was unbelievable, an unbelievable time in my life where I learned so much. I appreciated the work. It was also probably one of the more difficult things I've ever done career-wise. Um, but the thing that I discovered was really the work that's needed that you all do. It was incredible to me to see how unjust the prison system in Wisconsin is. I hadn't heard about that. Maybe I just wasn't plugged into the right networks, but I wasn't aware of it. And then when I was suddenly on the inside of it all, it was, I mean, shocking is an understatement to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
the state. And I don't mean that from a standpoint of like our prisons are inhumane spaces. That's not
Mm-hmm.
quite what I'm leaning into. What I am leaning into is the reality that getting a person from being incarcerated to being a contributing member of society, the path there is very crooked and not obvious. And these men and women who are trying to make
Mm-hmm.
that journey don't at the time, and this was a number of years ago, but didn't have a lot of that support that they needed. And it was difficult as a chaplain to try to figure out how do we connect those dots to create those areas of support. And then I was shocked
Mm-hmm.
at the time. So when I started working as a prison chaplain, our recidivism rate, which means those people who are going back to prison after they were released, was over 50%, which is just
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. And I've heard that number has gone down a bit, but even if it was 25%, I would think it was ridiculous. And then I learned that we're incarcerating twice as many people as our neighbor right over in Minnesota, and our demographics are fairly similar. So there was so much about
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin that seemed like, boy, we've just got this wrong. And then you follow the money and you quickly understand maybe why that could be, such as, our Department of Corrections is our biggest budget item in Wisconsin. So there's a lot of people's livelihoods who depend on people being incarcerated. And so,
Yeah.
as an employee of the state of Wisconsin and the Department of Corrections, it would seem as if doing your job would actually be a detriment to you long term because there may not be a job available for you if we actually did
Mm-hmm.
reentry right. So all that to
Right.
say, thank you so much for the work that you're
Yeah.
doing, and it's needed in so many vital ways. And I appreciate your connection to Centro as well. We have a deep connection with that incredible organization, just doing
Yeah.
a
Oh,
big
they're amazing.
group
It's
work with our immigrant
yeah, and
population.
yeah, yeah. No, love working with them. And there's one initiative I neglected to mention, but and it's interesting the overlap. and which is our Healing House, which is a 24/7 recuperative medical respite shelter for
Mm.
unhoused families who have someone being discharged from the hospital. So we opened that in 2019. It is still the only such recuperative medical shelter specifically for families. And we're really happy. We are working with the Wisconsin Partnership Program on a new grant that will also, in addition to expanding some of the services, will evaluate the impact of medical respite on families in terms of access to health care, maintained health, as well as just financial and economic stability. And one of the things we see too is because when we talk about the criminal justice system or the criminal legal system, is the way we've criminalized poverty and how many of the families who come through Healing House are kind of mired in these misdemeanor things for unpaid tickets or loitering or trespassing because they parked their car on a street for too long because that's where they were living, or they weren't able to pay a parking ticket. And so they get caught up in the system, which then just continues to push them down further into chaos further into poverty oftentimes. And so many of them, so many of the families that come through Healing House, I mean, the parents were working, the job loss was the result, and they were housed, and the job loss came first as the result of working in jobs that didn't have paid sick leave
Mm.
and losing income. So then came the housing loss. So then and
It's a
some of them were
slippery
buried
slope.
with medical debt too because
Hmm.
of chronic illness among their children or
Sure.
themselves.
It's a
All those, and the healthcare intersects with the criminal legal system too.
it's all so intimately intertwined, isn't it? And when I thought,
Hmm.
when I think about people, whether it's people who are struggling living in poverty or it's people who are incarcerated, the one, and I won't say this is universal, but it's close, that you'll realize there's just not that support structure under so many people in those
Yeah.
scenarios. And so I, like many people in this world, have had moments or times in life when things got challenging or difficult, and I just happened to be fortunate enough that I came into this world with a supportive family that was able to
Hmm.
help in those situations. But not everybody has that, and that's where I see organizations
Yeah.
like Just Dane and some of the work that you're doing being so vitally important. Same with our incarcerated population. So many of those people just do not have a strong support system underneath them to help.
Hmm.
That's a hard road to toe on your own, thinking that, because basically they open the doors and you walk back out into
Oh yeah.
society, and you're basically expected to figure it out. And I'm telling you, from the inside, I don't believe that they really set people up for success walking out the doors. And that's where, again, organizations like Just Dane can really be there to support people in those scenarios through all of your programs, which are so
Yeah.
many.
Well, and and it's interesting too because we're the other place where we're going to see that healthcare system intersect more with with the reentry work is, the fastest growing age demographic in our jails and prisons are people age 55 and older.
Mm.
And we incarcerate people for so long, they're becoming elderly and frail while they're in prison, and then we release them often after 40 or 50 years in, and they don't have adequate access to health care. They're not receiving screening for cognitive disabilities, for dementia, um, and they're just out. And so right now within our reentry, within our Journey Home and Circles of Support programs, we are working with about 27 individuals, 28 individuals who are age 70 and older, who
Mm.
have all been out. We just this so far this year have had two individuals released, one who was 78 and one who was 83, and both had been in for well over 45 years. So it, the support system isn't there for them. We can help them get benefits, but they haven't paid enough credits into Medicare to be eligible
Hmm.
for Medicare. They haven't paid into Social Security for a meaningful Social Security. They're often having to find jobs to try to supplement. And depending on the nature of their offense, they can be not denied housing in any senior complex. They can be denied nursing home beds, rehab beds after surgery. So it's going to become a crisis at some point if we don't
Yeah.
start developing geriatric reentry housing.
Oh, that's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up. And put yourself in a scenario, say, I'm moving toward, I turned 50 this year, so I'll just share that. And so starting to move to this stage of life where, let's say you're 55 and we work in the nonprofit world. Say all of our funding disappeared and you or I didn't have a
Hmm.
job tomorrow. Even for us who have been professionals who have been in this world for a while, because of our age, finding a job sometimes is difficult if you're
Yeah.
if you're at that 50 plus age, because
Hmm.
it's a little trickier. Now imagine, like you said, you're coming out of, say you've been in prison for 20 years and you get out and you need to find a job in that same age bracket, or 60 plus or 70 plus, because you can't
Yeah.
sustain yourself through, government assistance. It's uh it's hard to even wrap your mind around how you would even do that without an organization like Just Dane. Yeah, there's so many ways we could take this conversation, but I just think it's so important that people realize that our incarcerated population, almost all of them are going to get out, right? Just about
Hmm. Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
incarcerated in Wisconsin at some point is going to get out. Who is going to be there to support them when they do get out so that they can become contributing members of
Hmm.
our society, like most of them are
Yeah.
very capable of doing?
Yeah. I mean, and I think, from a public safety perspective, we should be asking ourselves, so if we don't want to do it because it's just the right thing to do, which it is,
Hmm.
from a public safety standpoint, to think about who has who's the bigger safety risk when someone comes out of prison? The person who's been able to find housing, connect with the community, help build meaningful relationships, find employment, or the person who gets out and can't put any of those pieces in place and just becomes desperate
Hmm.
and feels like they have nothing less to lose, nothing more to lose. So there's that. I think a very pragmatic public safety argument to be made for why we should be supporting the safety net, community-based safety net programs that help divert people from the system or are there when they get out. And then just from a pragmatic standpoint too, how much more cost effective it is. You mentioned the recidivism rate. To, because Journey Home and Circles of Support are funded through the United Way, so we track return rates.
Hmm.
So over the 25 years now that we've been operating those two programs and tracking return to prison rate for the folks who are engaged with the intensive services through that, um, we see a return rate that has fluctuated from 7.19% to 14.99%. And so each of those folks who didn't go back represents a cost savings. If you figure it costs us about $2,000 a year to wrap around supportive services for somebody, or 38,000 to incarcerate them.
Hmm.
For each person that didn't go back, we saved 36,000, and that's true for every reentry program in the state of Wisconsin that's helping keep people out. So we should be investing in those. We will save so much money if we would support the safety net that exists in the community. Um, I know we don't seem to have the attention span as a country to really want to support prevention programs in the way they need to be supportive, which is, yeah, here's a 10, for example, here's a 10-year contract for you to to build the program, implement the program, and really track the outcomes for a meaningful period of time versus here's 2 years of funding, see what you can do with it, which
Hmm.
by the time things are up and running, at least 6 months of that is over.
Yeah.
And it takes time, right? It takes time for people to change behaviors. It takes time to, yeah. So if we're not going to invest in prevention, then we need to be investing on the other side when people get out. But I would love to see us at every level. Um,
Yeah, at the end of the day,
Prevention, early intervention.
both are really important, and and
Yeah.
also just being careful with how many people that we are. I mean, it's a totally different issue, but the people that we are sending to prison when there may be alternatives that would be there. That again,
Mhm.
if money's the underlying factor that you're concerned about, well, if we find other programs instead of prison. Because remember, prison is housing, it's food, it's medical, it's
Hmm.
paying the people who work at that. There's so much money that, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, like
Yeah.
30 plus $38,000 to incarcerate one person. And if we have, 20,000 people, I don't know what the number is today, but if we have, tens of thousands of people
Hmm.
incarcerated in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
do the math, and that's hard on taxpayers.
Hmm.
And so, whereas if we could just create better programs, really on both sides, we're doing our society. I agree with you. It's just the right thing to do. And if you look at the
Yeah.
numbers, it also makes sense even civically, it makes a lot of sense.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and I think prisons, I think that the whole system pretty much operates the way it's intended to, at this point as we've evolved.
Yeah.
Um, but I think back, and I think when you think back, and even when I've talked with folks who have been are retired parole agents or retired from DOC, and part of the challenge I think they face, and there are some good programs offered
Hmm.
within the prisons,
Yep.
but there's not enough of them, and we put so many people away that they can't possibly provide the treatment programs that are needed for everyone who would like to participate. And so, yeah, people get out, like you said, not having had that support, that opportunity to learn, to build new skills, and that's got to be. I mean, as some for folks who are working in our prison systems, like it just feels like the whole system is structured to eventually rob everyone of their humanity,
Hmm.
because you can't expect the employees to just keep working in an environment that just becomes increasingly hopeless for so many people. I mean, it's just, and we work with, we work, and when I talk with parole agents, they're like, it used to be, I was like a case manager. You
Hmm.
know, I had a caseload that was manageable. I could see people regularly. I could help connect them to resources, but it's not possible. It's not possible anymore. So I think this got to be incredibly draining and frustrating job. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I often
I
tell
think if there's,
people, yeah, I often tell
go
people
ahead.
during the time that I worked in that space that the staff was just as toxic as any of the people incarcerated
Mhm,
were. Because, and again, it's not because we're talking about horrible human beings in any level here. We're just talking
mhm,
about people who are in a certain situation that is unfortunate. And that, as you mentioned, that could be the guards that are working there, the employees that are working there, or
mhm,
that could be the people that are incarcerated, because it's such a demoralizing system to be inside of in any way, shape, or
mhm,
form. I went there as a chaplain, so I was really hopeful that I would have had the opportunity to encourage people's spiritual journey. And it was an interfaith
mhm,
opportunity, which I really loved. And so that's why I went there. And I did get a lot of opportunities to do that. But it was made very clear to me that from a department, because I was hired by the state of Wisconsin, that from their standpoint, they believed I was there just to keep them from getting sued, for something
mhm,
having to do with religious rights. And so there's for me, even as a chaplain, trying to
mhm.
bring that kind of, a space of safety and comfort, there was still just this ton of tension that I had to deal with on a regular basis. And it was really, really challenging, to the point that that's why I didn't eventually move on, because I had another great opportunity. I moved on
Mhm.
because I just didn't think that I could be true to myself and stay in that space, because of that tension. So it's
Yeah.
difficult. And
Yeah.
we could bemoan the system all day long, but I always want to make sure that we leave people with hope for an answer. So how can
Mhm.
people, with Just Dane, how can people get involved with your programs if they wanted to volunteer, or be part of the solution?
Yeah. There's lots of opportunities. So I mentioned the reentry simulations. We'll be doing about 15 of those this year. And those are, because people's lives are busy. So sometimes you can't commit to every week I can do this, but call me if you're going to be doing something like a simulation, and I'll see if I can help staff one of the tables and be one of the volunteers making that happen. So we have those opportunities. Our mentoring connections program, we're always looking for mentors, circles of support. We're always looking to grow the circles. And the easiest way to connect with us is just to send an email through our website, which is www.justdane.org. Um, and just say you'd like to volunteer, and our volunteer and community engagement manager, Danny Crutcher, will follow up with you. And mentoring, we ask once a week for at least an hour for at least a year commitment. And for circles of support, each circle runs, it used to be 4 months because that was about 4 to 6 months was about what people needed as things have gotten more difficult. And we're seeing older people, those circles are lasting. It's not unusual for them to last a year to a year and a half. But then volunteers can take a break, right? Your circle finishes and you can just let our coordinator, John Gibbons, know, I want to sit this next circle out and then I'll come back. And so that happens. And that's why we always love to have new volunteers coming in and trainings. And uh, so, yeah, folks can follow and look for the simulations coming up on our website as well or social media. Just Bakery sometimes has some volunteer opportunities. Those tend to get posted on social media and tend to be more the one-time things, although we're always looking for folks who might be willing to do some math tutoring with our students when they are working on the accounting and cost control section of the program. So,
Yeah,
yep,
wonderful. So reach out through the website, lots of opportunities to help. This is a great
yep,
organization that can just make sure that you have what you need to help. And this hasn't happened yet, right? My wife and I are huge jazz fans, and you have a
right.
fundraiser coming up. So why don't you share a little
We
bit about
do.
that?
Yeah, so this is our annual Jazz for Justice fundraising event. Will be Thursday, April 30th from, let me get the time right. I believe it's from 4 to 9. It's on our website. Tickets are $100. We have two bands that'll be playing. One of them is a local, they're both local. And the one I definitely know is booked is called Linda and the Zeros. So we're looking forward to that. There'll be hearty hors d'oeuvres, and we'll be at Atwood Music Hall here in Madison. And there's good parking, and it's a beautiful venue, so it's relatively new. So we're looking forward to that. It's always a fun event. We have a couple of awards that we present. We have two annual awards. One is the Visionary Award, where we like to recognize either organizations or individuals in the community who really have had this, have just implemented initiatives, programs, and really just stepped up and met the needs that they saw that emerged. And this year we're going to be awarding that Visionary Award to three individuals who work together. I don't know that they were always together. Betty Banks, Jeannie Erickson, and Gadi Bendan. Gadi unfortunately passed away a few years ago,
Mm.
but the three of them have founded the NAACP branch here in Dane County, Club TNT, television and radio for youth, Project Babies, and just a couple of newspapers and just a whole host of things. So we're excited to honor them. And then our partner award will be with Ascendium Educational Services. I don't know if I have the name actually correct. So Ascendium, I'm not sure what the rest of it is, but that'll be on our website as well. So we're happy they have focused a lot of their giving and philanthropic work on supporting educational programs, both within institutions and for folks who are criminal legal system impacted, pre-release and post-release. So just doing a lot of good work in the community and across the country.
Yeah, so make sure everybody that's available gets out to that amazing event. And Linda, just thank you so much. I know you're extremely
Yeah, thank
busy
you.
and there's a lot going on. So anytime that people set aside a little bit of time to talk on this podcast, I sure appreciate it. So I will be in touch, obviously, because we work in the same spaces all the time, but really encourage
I
people
look forward
to,
to it.
yeah, but I really encourage people to reach out, get involved. This is something that it's a big problem and we all need to work together to create some solutions. And Just Dane has created a lot of great solutions, so let's get the hands and feet to the work that's been created here and make a difference in our state so we can support people coming out of our prison systems and help them just land on their feet. So thank you, Linda, so much for the time.
Yes, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Take good care.